Three, two, one. Tiger fans, welcome back to the Clemson Sports Show. Very excited about today's episode as it is our first game preview, and we're going to be previewing Clemson's upcoming game against NC State. They're leaving the Tigers den that is Death Valley. They're heading up to Raleigh, North Carolina to play at Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. And Matt Connolly is actually on his way there right now. Matt, how's the drive to Raleigh?
Yeah, it's going okay. There's some traffic, but had to get out of the way and pull over and get this podcast recorded. So looking forward to talking about this game and then making it the rest of the way up to Raleigh and hopefully watching a really good game tomorrow.
You know, I think the people would call that hard work and determination. We love that, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us here while I'm in the comfort of my apartment. You're on the road doing great work. So let's jump right into it, Matt. You know, this is obviously a huge test for Clemson. Some may argue that it's the biggest test for the remainder of the season. You know, people may point to that Pittsburgh game, the Syracuse road game as well. But it's a huge road game for them, their first ACC road game. What are your overall thoughts on how the game will play out? Don't need to give a prediction just yet, but how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I think going into the season, I didn't really see this as a huge road test. It was a game that you kind of look at and say that could be tough. You know, they've had some struggles in Raleigh, but I think just with the way Clemson's played to start this year, there's a ton of pressure on Clemson going into this game. They really need to come out, really put their best foot forward. They won last week against Georgia Tech, but as we've talked about all week, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't the standard that they're used to playing to. It was an ugly win. They were fortunate to escape with a win. And so now you're going on the road where, you have your offense that has not been clicking. It's been turning the ball over, putting the ball on the ground too much. Can't get anything going in the running game, has really struggled offensively. Now you're going on the road to a hostile environment. We talked with Eric McLean earlier this week, and he said NC State's one of the toughest places to play that he ever played at. You're going on the road to a really tough place to play. And you just got to find a way to win. I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point in the season if it's pretty, what it looks like, but you got to find a way to win and then come together and just try to get some semblance of an offense and squeak out a victory.
Absolutely. And I want to kind of break it down, not necessarily position by position, but let's look at some key areas, in my opinion, that will affect the outcome of the game. Let's start off with the tandem that NC State has, Zonovan Knight, who's rushed for nearly 300 yards this season, and Ricky Person Jr., who's rushed for 165 yards. Zonovan Knight, just watching his highlight reel, a tough guy to bring down, got a strong lower body, very difficult for defenders to bring him down. What have you seen from Clemson's rush defense so far this season? Do you think that'll kind of carry over until Saturday?
Yeah, I do. I just think that this front, even without Tyler Davis, who as we know is going to miss several weeks, but I just think even without him, they've been so good. They're really good at linebacker. I mean, you have last week, your backup linebacker comes in, Levante Bentley, hasn't played much throughout his career really, but Waits finally gets his opportunity, comes in and leads the team with 13 tackles, a couple tackles for loss, and is the ACC linebacker of the week. So Clemson's front seven, man, is really good. They were a little leaky on the back end last week, allowed some rushing lanes with the quarterback some, and then gave up a few big plays in the passing game. But I just think against the run, it's just a really hard defense to run on it. And, you mentioned NC State has a couple of talented running backs, but I still think it'll be hard for them to move the ball on the ground.
Now, I'm glad you brought up, some of those issues that we saw in terms of letting Georgia Tech quarterback Jordan Yates out of the pocket, get some scrambles, especially toward the end of that game. That was definitely an issue. Now, what we know about NC State's quarterback, Devin Leary, Dabo Swinney even brought it up earlier this week in a press conference. He likes to run. He's a pretty good dual threat quarterback. How do you think Clemson addresses that for this upcoming game, taking what they saw against, Yates and trying to duplicate it, in terms of stopping what Leary brings to the table?
Yeah, I think Yates is a little more of a threat as a runner, I guess. I mean, Leary, like you mentioned, can move some in the pocket, but I don't think that he's a guy that you really are too worried about getting out and making a lot of big plays in the running game. But you mentioned Clemson struggled some with that last week. And that's one thing that Brent Venables has really been really good at throughout his career is if he struggles with something, the next week it's going to be fixed. And so you look at coming off the Ohio State game, the secondary, the next game they play, it was a long wait, but the next game they play is against Georgia. And we all think Georgia, or thought going into the year, Georgia was going to be pretty good passing the ball, Venables, and that defense really shut that down. A few years ago against Pitt, people thought they had figured out the secret to beating Clemson with a shovel pass, and teams have been trying it ever since without much success, and including Georgia Tech last week. So Venables is really good about getting stuff cleaned up like that, and I don't think that'll be a huge issue. I'm really expecting the defense to play well this week once again.
Now, some people may be screaming at, whether you're watching the YouTube video or listening to our podcast, maybe screaming and wondering, why have I not asked about Clemson's offense just yet? Well, let's get right to it, because that's obviously the biggest storyline of the season thus far. They put up 3 points against Georgia, 14 points against Georgia Tech. North Carolina State allowed 24 to Mississippi State, and then, 7 to Furman, and, 0 to USF. It's really hard to match any of those teams to Clemson and the potential that Clemson's offense has. What do you expect from this Tigers offense on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, NC State's going to do, I think, a lot of the things that Georgia Tech did. They already have kind of a similar structure, and I really wouldn't be surprised if the rest of the year, if you just see teams play a lot of odd front against Clemson to try to, you have a young interior of that offensive line, try to give them issues, try to confuse them, give them stunts and twists and all that kind of stuff. Bring linebackers from different places. Really, everything that Georgia Tech did, I wouldn't be surprised at all if NC State does some of that as well. So just testing that young offensive line, inexperienced group, at least in new positions. I mean, Bockhorst is a senior, but this is his first year playing center. So just testing that group and seeing what they can do, seeing if they can hang tough and bounce back and give the offense a chance to really move the ball. So, I think the big thing this week is just starting off establishing the running game, particularly if NC State's playing that kind of defense that Georgia Tech did, trying to drop back into coverage and take away the pass. And then I think you have to take a few early shots downfield. A few years ago, Clemson was kind of struggling offensively, and Dabo said, look, we just need to open it up, have fun. So we saw a halfback pass on the first drive and a few trick plays and throwback screens and all kinds of stuff just to try to get the offense having some fun, get them going. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a game like that as well, where you see maybe a little trickeration early on to try to get the defense off guard.
All right, Matt, good job. You jumped ahead on my next question there. I'm going to kind of throw it back to you, worded it differently, though. Let's say NC State does what Georgia Tech did last week, and, they drop 8 back and dare Clemson to run. That's something that Tony Elliott and DJ even talked about, is, not necessarily catching Clemson off guard, but catching them off guard, not something that they were entirely prepared for. Let's say NC State does the same thing. Do you think Clemson should just say, you know what? We got Justin Ross, we got Joe Ngata, we got Frank Ladson, we got talented dudes. We're just going to send them out, and we got DJ with the big arm, and hopefully you can stop it. If not, hopefully we can beat you. And if not, if we turn it over, so what? We trust our defense.
I don't know about that. I just think that they can't let NC State completely dictate what they're going to do. So, I think if NC State comes out and plays pass coverage, well, you still have to mix it up some. You still have to take some shots downfield. You can't just let them say, hey, we're playing this defense, or we're only going to run the ball and play real conservative. I think there are ways that you can try to attack a defense like that with shots downfield, in the running game, in the screen game. You just can't let them completely control what you're going to do based off of their defensive alignment. So, I don't think you necessarily force the ball down the field and try to force the ball to Justin Ross, but you definitely have to make that a part of the offense still and give those guys a chance to impact the game.
Now, Matt, heading into this big-time road matchup against NC State, who are the 3 players that need to stand out for Clemson in order for them to come out victorious and honestly get a much-needed win? We know they've won back-to-back games, but this is a huge win that could potentially determine the fate of their season.
Yeah, let's start on the offensive line. I think Matt Bockhorst really needs to play well. I think Marcus Tate obviously struggled last game, but Matt Bockhorst wasn't great either. And so, one of those guys is a true freshman starting, making his first road start. The other guy is a senior leader of this offense who's, at a new position for sure, but he's playing a lot of big games and had a lot of big opportunities. So I think it starts with Bockhorst. I think he really needs to come out, have a good game, establish a new line of scrimmage, really give the offensive confidence. Particularly after the way he talked this week, talking about getting the guys fired up and stuff, I think it's important for him to come out and play well. I think Will Shipley's the next guy. He considered NC State. He has some ties to NC State. I think when he gets going, it's really hard. And so I think he has the vision. I think he has the speed, the power. He has everything you want in a running back. And he's played really well to this point. Obviously had the fumble last week on his last carry, but other than that, it's played really well. And so, if he can, we heard all offseason about his speed. If he can get in the open field, make a big play in the running game, I think that would be big and just being, not if he can break along, that's great, but also just being consistent and getting the yards that are there. And then the last guy I'll go to receiver. Man, I've been going back and forth about this one, but I think I'm going to go with EJ Williams. He's a guy that's kind of, I wouldn't say let me down. He's playing through pain right now with his hurt thumb, but I really thought he would have a bigger impact on the offense this year. Kind of be that third receiver at worst behind Justin Ross and Ngata, but I really thought he had a chance to be kind of right there with those guys, and he hasn't made a ton of plays yet this year. So, I'm looking to him with some of the other guys, with Ross and Ngata, Frank Ladson getting more attention. Maybe he's able to make a big play this week.
So, Matt, I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about, another part of the game coming into this matchup here. It's the spread. Clemson's favored to beat NC State by 10 points. Are you a little bit surprised that the number is that low? That's a surprisingly low number considering the caliber of these two programs.
Yeah, I think going into the year, we all expected the spread to be much higher in this game. Looking at it, we thought probably most of the games it was going to be a 20-point spread, if not more. But if you look at how Clemson's played this year against an ACC opponent going on the road, it's hard for any opponent to imagine them being favored by much more than 10 just with what they put on the field. Just so inconsistent offensively. Georgia Tech, they struggled at home with last week. That's not a great ACC team. That's not a top-of-the-half ACC team. They lost to Northern Illinois at home to open the season, and then that Northern Illinois team turned around and gave up like 70 to Michigan. So I think it's about right, just based off what we've seen this year. Not what I expected going into the year, but just based off the way the teams have played through 3 games, I think it's about right.
So I want you to go out. I don't know if you're necessarily going to go out on a limb here. I don't know what your prediction is going to be. I'm going to share mine afterward. But how do you expect this game to play out in terms of the score, and who do you think is going to be the game MVP on either side?
Yeah, so I don't think that it's a game where Clemson's going to just figure it all out at once and going to explode for 70 points. I think it's going to be a gradual process, just from what we've heard from the offensive players, from the offensive staff. I think it's not a thing where they can just flip a switch and all of a sudden it's going to be great. So I do think Clemson wins, but man, I don't think it's going to be easy. I'm going to go 23-17 Clemson, and wouldn't be surprised if it's wouldn't be stunned if it's an NC State win. But I'm going to stick with Clemson. Going to give Clemson the benefit of the doubt. I still think that there's enough talent on this team, enough veteran guys that they'll find a way to get it done. But man, I don't think it's going to be easy. What about you?
Okay, hold on. Before I get to my prediction, you said that you wouldn't be surprised if it's an NC State win. We've been talking about what Clemson needs to do in order to win this game, who needs to be the impactful players. But in what scenario do you see NC State coming out on top? Let me rephrase that. In what does NC State need to do in order to beat Clemson in your eyes?
I think it's a lot more just about what Clemson does and just the struggles that they've had offensively. NC State's been good against the run this year. Clemson's obviously struggled to run the ball. I think Clemson's going to have to hit some big plays in the passing game to win this game. And so, I think that they'll make enough plays in the passing game to come out on top. But, man, if DJ's off again, if he misses, he had 3 throws in the first probably 18 minutes of last week's game that were off, just misses that really killed drives and were big misses. So if he does that again, and if he, gets rattled playing on the road, his first road game in front of a real sold-out stadium, I think there's definitely a path for NC State to win. But I'm sticking with Clemson, but don't have a ton of faith in it.
All right,
and I'll go to players of the game too. Sorry, I think offensively, I'll go Justin Ross. Just I think that he's going to find a way to will this team, the senior leader, to will this team to win and make some big plays on the road. And defensively, I'll go Brian Brzee, just stepping up in the middle and having a monster game with Tyler Davis out.
All right, so I'm going to actually go with a similar score prediction. I have to wonder if you saw mine. I was like, you know what? I'm going to change it up just a little bit, but I'm going to make it close. I said on the board on our ClemsonSports.com message board that I believe it's going to be 24-17. That's the way I envision it. Both teams eat a field goal. And look, I'm not expecting Clemson's offense to explode either. I think it's going to be a struggle yet again. I think the defense is going to buy them time, maybe get a couple of turnovers, put them in some favorable field positions. We saw last week between NC State and Mississippi State that NC State had a turnover problem. They got within scoring distance. They were within a few yards, and for some reason tried to jump past through it. Mississippi State intercepted it. than Zonovan Knight, who I said is a tough guy to bring down. Yeah, he was a tough guy to bring down. Mississippi State had a few tacklers on him, but it allowed Mississippi State to punch out the ball. They got a fumble there. So I believe this NC State team is a little bit turnover prone. I think Clemson could take advantage of that. The defense will be able to help out the offense a little bit. But yeah, I think it's going to be a struggle. I don't think Clemson fans are going to be coming out of this game super happy about how the team looks. I'm not expecting DJU to be the top performer. I'd probably say it's going to be Will Shipley being established as the number one running back, as Dabo said earlier this week. I think that'll give him some confidence. You talked about the NC State connections. The school it's a school he's considering. It's probably that he's had marked as well. So I say he's going to be the MVP on offense. And defensively, I'm going to go Andrew Booth Jr. Andrew's just had a fantastic game. There was one play against Georgia Tech. I don't recall the quarter. I believe it was the third, where Georgia Tech had a short conversion, third and a few yards, threw it out to the left. There was nobody behind Andrew. If he misses the tackle, it could potentially be a touchdown. And he made an excellent open field tackle to stop them. So I think he's going to come up big time for Clemson. And yeah, I'm expecting. I would honestly be shocked if the Tigers lose. This isn't the game I'm expecting them to lose. I think you have to look a few weeks down to maybe Syracuse or Georgia, those two road games where I'd get a little bit concerned. But yeah, I'm expecting Clemson to win as well. So Matt, I'll throw it back to you. Are there any other thoughts that you have regarding this game? That you'd like to share?
I'm guessing you meant Syracuse or Pitt.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, man, I'd be shocked if they lose to Syracuse. I think this game's more losable than Syracuse, just from what I've seen so far this year. But we'll see. But yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page, and I like your picks player of the game too. I mean, Will Shipley, I won't be surprised at all if he has a monster game. And then again, like Andrew Booth Jr., I mean, he's like arguably the best cornerback in the country this year. He's been great on the edge. It's in that play you're talking about. He did that a few times against Georgia too. Just been great tackling on the edge. So yeah, I like both of those picks. Look forward to the game Saturday.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it, and we're going to be providing you all complete, comprehensive coverage as always. You can head to clemsonsports.com, check out some of our great written work, or subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. We've had some great content up. Matt, you spoke with former Clemson offensive line, Matt McClain. You did a really good breakdown of the Georgia Tech game. We both got to speak with Rusty Phelps, who's the head coach of Trevor Etienne, big-time 2022 running back target for Clemson. So, yes, be sure to check that out, subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay tuned for more content in the future. Thank you all for tuning in.